You made a comment earlier on tonight about talking about the polemical response to your book to I
Mm.
Mix What I Like in Mixtape Manifesto. And you mentioned that you kind of more lean into talking about counterinsurgency and psychological warfare as opposed to looking at things in terms of internal colonialism these days. And maybe that was just kind of I was just curious why, or like what the if that's a like
No,
your rationale for that shift.
no, I appreciate. No, I didn't mean to. So thank you. No, I didn't mean to suggest that I don't view things the same way in terms of colonialism. I just have been enjoying the use of that language more. I think is really all I meant. And if anything, I think that the whole argument around counterinsurgency, again, following you, Dylan, Ori, and others, it makes the internal colonial argument more legit because it's saying that these are the same tactics that would be applied to a traditional colony being applied here. So yeah, I didn't mean to suggest one was replacing the other. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's just it's something that I think about a lot because the like counterinsurgency to me is kind of it's a narrative shift by imperial powers. Like, why does it come about? It comes about with the language of it. Why does this language come about? It comes about really, I think, primarily, like a lot of times people trace it to the Philippines. And it was the United States has always been inconvenient for the United States to call itself a colonizing power. Right? And so you say, "We're doing something else. We're doing pacification. We're doing counterinsurgency. We're doing" um so you create kinda other language to justify your policing operations or whatever in, you know, Puerto Rico or, Cuba, um, the Philippines, and so on. And I think for the UK at a certain point, it became similarly inconvenient, right? So it became inconvenient for them to talk about suppressing the Mau Mau revolution strictly through a lens of a colonial power, right? And so then you start to see these people starting to talk about low intensity operations, counterinsurgency, et cetera. But when you read the people who actually write these books, like the military folks like Kitson and so on, like, they're like, they're basically all just like, well, this is colonialism, or we've learned this through, or we're in this colony doing this thing. And so Kitson he understands that Kenya is a British colony when he's there. Um, and so I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is, again, it's a language that has spread into the academy. It develops out of the military industrial complex. Um, and even with a lot of another thing that they also say often is that what we're really talking about is counter-revolutionary warfare, but we can't really say that because people have too many positive associations with revolution. And so there's that. There's also, I will say, rereading Sharice Burton-Stelly's book, she talks about the subversive tradition in U.S. statecraft, and that's really interesting to me too, just because, like, um, before you get to the stage, counterinsurgency does kind of imply that there is an insurgency, and often in the United States, when we're talking about this, it's not really clear, and I fall victim to this too, that there is some kind of insurgency that's being suppressed. It's like, no, they're actually suppressing before any kind of insurgency develops, which again is something that, Kitson talks about, of like, we have to get in there and disrupt this stuff before it even gets to the phase where, even the non-violent phase of protest, we have to disrupt before that. Um, so anyway, it's an open question for me, but I think it's like we always need to hold these things together. And I think also there's a lot done by, I think, the work of internal colonialism thesis, and like the work of New Africans, and others, but like they're pointing often to a moment in history, often like the end of, formal slavery, when there was a possibility for self-determination for Black people and that being denied, intentionally suppressed, right? And so and it never is not suppressed, right? There's never been some reckoning where it's like, well, actually, we've done all this stuff and we need to, you know, provide some form of reparations or some form of, you know, a, a choice or, so that was never done. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not I understand some of the difficulties with internal colonialism, especially with the, Black people being so dispersed, African people being so dispersed within the country now that the Amilcar Cabral question of like if the territory is not totally confined and stuff like that. It doesn't have borders, but I still think that a lot of the counterinsurgency stuff gets used also to talk about a quite general condition. Like we had the conversation with Neo Klaus on pacification, and he's taking it back to Rome and Greece and stuff like that, and I mean, those societies are fucked up too. But the so there's something built into the liberal state, to the nation state concept in terms of counterinsurgency that's kind of always been a part of how they've developed this form. Um, and I think, I guess my worry in terms of focusing too hard on just counterinsurgency is that it kind of can become just everybody's facing the same problems here, and I do think there's something specific about the experience of African people in the United States. So yeah.
100% agree. So this is a classic case of they're not talking about meism. Because I heard you make a similar point on one of your shows, and when I was listening, I was like, "I'm that's not me," because I don't. I'm in my mind using the reference for a very specific point reason to connect it to the colonial experience. But what you're saying is 100%. So I'm going to because I even had, if I understand you correctly, I had a similar reaction to all of the, or have a similar reaction to all of the language of racial capitalism. Not
Mhm.
that it's wrong, not that it doesn't have an important history, but for the similar reason, like why do we need this when colonialism works perfectly to encompass all of the experience? But no, 100%. So I'm going to make an immediate shift because I didn't. Again, in my mind, it was pointing to the colonial relationship, and this was buttressing it. But I think you make an exact. I mean, what you're saying is it's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't raising it as a critique. It was a question just because you raised it earlier on,
I
and um, I think that it's still. I mean, Ori and I have talked about this to some extent too. Like, how much? I mean, there's all these issues with engaging counterinsurgency literature because you're literally reading the enemy's books, right? And so then you have to read it really distrustfully. You have to be very critical as you're going through it. Um, but and I think that it's fascinating to me on its face, like just what they say that they're doing, and and I know you know this and all the stuff you read too and talk about, like, I mean, they're just very clear on, like, we'll kill these people and these other people, we might have to kill some of them too, but, really we wanna make people like us. Like, it's just sinister, and they don't even see it that way. They're just very so that's why I'm interested definitely in the world of counterinsurgency, but
let
I've
me.
been I've
Yeah,
been
sorry. Go ahead.
critiqued on it too. I've been critiqued on it too from people of saying, like, what you're talking about is counter revolution, or you're talking about, and you're contributing to a lack of clarity for people by, you know, basically taking this up on its own terms, even though I'm always trying to read it against the grain. So yeah,
Can
it's
I
just
just show you?
interesting. It's a
I'm not going to play
Yeah.
anything because I don't have it queued up. But one of the YouTube you know, one of the areas that I've devolved into is the admittedly the special forces community of YouTube. And on this guy's channel, I got to give him credit. It's well produced. He's even kind of funny. He talks about a former Beret talking about, and in this video, he's saying what YouTube encourages in a misunderstanding of the special forces community. And one of his main points in this is that the main job of special forces is not to go on YouTube and create these fantasies about Navy SEALs and all this other stuff. And it's not even to be in direct conflict. In fact, he's a section of the video he stops to talk about we're not even in combat. A lot of our work is strictly, I forgot the language he's using, but it's in messaging, it's in communicating, it's in narrative development, it's in hearts and minds, it's in, turning local to be colonized communities into a military force against their own people. That's what they're usually going in for. They're not even trying to get into combat. And a lot of the
Right.
stories like Lone Survivor and all these other movies that get turned into movies are fake stories that were based in what was supposed to be a quiet insertion to manipulate people to work against their own communities. So anyway, I don't know where I just thought that was it was fascinating. But however you meant it, I don't mind taking it as a criticism and a good one. I think it's, I like what you're saying and I appreciate it. So and again, I thought I understood it, but in my mind, I was strictly the one. I was like the woman in the club listening to the song with all the B references, talking about they're not talking about me, or
Yeah.
the that's not they're not talking about me, But I was definitely So no, that's a really good point, man.
No, yeah, I mean, I just think that the thing about it, right, is that we wanna maintain, and this is the challenge, is, and you do this in all your work, but we wanna maintain the lineages of actual revolutionary politics within the work that we do, and I think that there's always a danger when we take on, you know, even the enemy's language too much. I mean, like, so somebody raised this point to me once. They were like, "Insurgency itself is their term." Right? So our aspiration is not to be insurgents, it's to be revolutionaries, or it's to be, whatever people's is.
See,
But it
again,
but
no, you're right. So like, I liked the insurgent reference because of when I've those early newspaper reports calling Nat Turner and his crew insurgents. So I
but it's
liked
the
like
newspaper
what you were
reports
right.
that are saying that.
They are. You're right. It's the newspaper saying it. But I took it as to say like he's a revolutionary. So yeah, I
Right.
am. But you're right. No, you are. What you're saying is exactly right. I really.
Alright,
Oh
man, that's all.
man, you're right.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
say that I appreciate everything that you're doing. These Saturdays are a lot of fun, and also shout out to Renee. You guys did a great job this morning too.
No,
It's
thank
good to
you.
see you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.